Next, we have Dr. Diver, John Oberholzer, Dent, and Charlie Reed to talk about some of the social impacts of dam removal. Thank you. Hey,
Why did the salmon cross the road? To get to the other tide. This one. Where does a fish keep its money?
Where?
In the riverbank. Anyways, Ayuki Kobuda. My name is John. I am a biologist for the Karuk Tribe Department of Natural Resources in the Water Quality Program. My job is mostly aquatic ecology, but I also have a background in ethnic studies and youth work, and so that really came in handy with this project. I also work with the Karuk Tribe Education Department, which was a really great partnership that we utilized during this project to involve the youth in the research. So we're here representing a team of university folks and tribal folks who came together to work on a social impact assessment, trying to put together a baseline for the tribal experience of dam removal specific to the Karuk tribe in the mid-Klamath. So we're going to talk a little bit about the research and how it came to be. And then we have two sets of findings. One is recasting dam removal as ecocultural revitalization, which is the title of a paper we published earlier this year. And this is really about reconceiving dam removal with connections between the biophysical and the sociocultural. And then we're also going to present some of the findings from our baseline assessment, which talk about education, livelihoods, and access to cultural resources. And then we'll get to hear from our friend, colleague, and mentor, Ron Reed, which is a really special treat today. This is Ron and his son dip net fishing at Ishipishi Falls near the center of the world. And this is really what we're here to talk about today, is dam removal from this perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right, there's a lot to talk about, but we're gonna hit the highlights today. So just to introduce myself briefly, my name is Sibyl Diver. I teach at Stanford in environmental science program, and I've spent about 15 years in partnership with the Karuk Tribe and my mentor here, Ron Reed. And it's really work for me that started about 25 years ago, learning about how salmon issues are really strongly interconnected with indigenous rights. And that was something I started learning in Russia as a translator for international exchanges. But that led me to my experience in graduate school at UC Berkeley, getting involved with the Karuk Tribe UC Berkeley Collaborative. And that was in 2008. And you can see our co-founders here, Ron Reed, together with Tom Carlson, and another colleague, Lisa Lucia Liu. And that was 2008, so 15 years ago. And it really is exciting because none of this work would really be possible, I think, without the relationships that we got to start at that time. And that grew into some of the research we're going to talk about here. And this is a picture of our scoping visit when we were planning out this study and spending some time on the river with weavers who were doing this work in their own space, but then sort of sharing out with the team what they wanted to see out of a research project. And I'll just also add that some of the motivation for this research is coming out of this space and this group of folks. So we were, we're thinking about a research gap here around Indigenous knowledge and assessment. And that's sort of an overarching challenge around the exclusion of Indigenous peoples from scientific assessment in many cases. But also we're responding to a request from this research community and a meeting in 2020 in Medford that was kind of a key moment where folks were looking back at what studies had been done, what still needed to be done, and looking at the LWA case and saying, we have a lot of baseline information on the ecosystem, but but not a lot on the social side. And we kind of missed that. Like we would like to see, what's happening now and compare it back to something. We'd like to have a baseline on the social side. So that's part of the inspiration for this project. And I'll pass back.
So we had a one-year scoping process where we talked with community members, tribal scientists, other researchers, and we put together our methodology. We talked to 56 individuals during focus groups and interviews, and we sent out a survey to the entire tribal membership, including both enrolled members and descendants, which is almost 8,000 people. We got 238 responses back, which for a sample frame that large is actually a very good response rate. We did this directly before infrastructure removal started in 2023. And our goal is to repeat this after we've had some time to see results and see what that. We had fantastic response on our survey. People from all over the country, as far away as Alaska, Hawaii, and Maine. We had a great diversity of age, education, gender, including a strong two-spirit cohort, income, and also we looked at politics of counties of residence and tribal council districts, which represent the historic Karuk communities that are served by the tribe.
Okay. And thank you. And the other part about this is that we've been working hard. So these are two of the publications that we have at this point. So on the right is the Klamath Dam Removal Karuk Tribal Community Wellbeing Baseline Assessment with our team, and that's a mixed methods 130-page report, and this is sort of a shorter publication, a peer-reviewed publication on recasting Klamath Dam removal as ecocultural revitalization and restorative justice. So we're really excited about that's work, and we're going to just have time to share some of the highlights today. So starting with that peer-reviewed paper, we're really thinking about going back to the title of this talk, sort of the reference system for what is it exactly that we are restoring to as part of the complex process that we're entering into with the Klamath post-dam removal. And we're trying to think through what does it look like to create a more holistic reference system in our concepts and also in our methods and in the goals and indicators that we use to measure outcomes. And could we perhaps expand on some of those goals and indicators that we're using right now as a way to be more inclusive and bring tribal community well-being into all parts of the work. So the central priorities shared by study participants in our focus groups and with the survey from that paper are really the priority of ecocultural revitalization, healing the river to heal the people, a grounding in ceremony and spiritual relations. So the idea that this is about not just fish, but about the relationships held in ceremony. And we could hear more about that later. And centering Karuk tribal youth engagement in all aspects of the process as a central goal around what does it mean to develop cultural connectivity and continuity in this work alongside the continuity and the connectivity of the river. So to really just, again, hit some of the highlights here, we're thinking about this contribution of the assessment around recasting dam removal as an ecocultural revitalization process. This is an opportunity to really bring some of the Karuk worldviews that some of us have gotten to know and have been taught into assessment methodologies and into our understandings of what dam removal is and can be. And this is just one example where we see our co-author, Carolyn Smith, who's a basket weaver and also a professor of anthropology, gathering willow sticks here. The willows really need to be cleaned out with flushing flows so you can get nice straight sticks, high quality materials, and using those materials from the river to hold the babies, to hold the relationships, to hold the connections between people and place that are essential to this work. And it's not just one thing. It's not just the fish. It's all of these human, non-human interrelations that those of us who work in partnership with tribes are reminded of that every day. And it's the tan oak mushrooms, it's the basket materials, it's the huckleberries, all of these, freshwater mussels, the acorns and the fish, regalia species too. It's all of it together. And so I'll pass back to John to say a few more comments.
So this is a diagram that took us quite a while to put together. This is based off of many interviews with cultural practitioners and tribal scientists. And we put together the information and came up with this scheme. This is a limited version. This does not include all cultural resources. There's also deer, regalia species, food, medicine. But for a couple of the key cultural species here, salmon, lamprey, basket plants, the practice of ceremony, the delivery of large woody debris and rocks for building, these are functions that are inherently related to river connectivity. And so when you have dam removal, the ecocultural resources are impacted through all of these different vectors. And it's complicated, but it's parsable. The other thing that's not represented in this diagram is that the people have their well-being based on these specific species. And so when these species do well, it emanates out into the society, into the people's world as well. The other thing that we like to note about this diagram is that it doesn't quite represent the situation because in reality, there's a bi-directional flow of benefits between people and place, where practices like coppicing and cultural burning are helping keep the environment in healthy shape for the people mutually. So when we talk about ecocultural revitalization, we're trying to expand the scope of study a little bit here. So if you look at the first example here, opening up the spawning grounds, right? Our salmon populations are going to recover. It's really exciting, but it also means that family time on the river can come back during fishing. Intergenerational connections and traditional education can come back when people are on the river again. Food security in a very rural area. These are all consequences of dam removal. If you look at mitigating toxic algae, right? That's a big recreation risk avoided. But we're also talking about the ability to successfully fulfill ceremonial responsibilities. We're talking about foundational experiences for youth with the river that are going to set the tone for the rest of their engagement with the environment. So there are these extensions of the biophysical change into the sociocultural world, and that's what we're trying to capture here.
Okay. Thank you, John. And so now just a few points here on the second publication. This is our baseline assessment, where we're really thinking about these domains of tribal community well-being as a way of translating some of these place-based cultural relationships. And this is based off of some previous research done by Jamie Donatuto and Rachel Donkerschlut, Courtney Carruthers, and others. But it's thinking through, well, what are the domains that we want to expand into if folks are setting goals and are monitoring those in the restoration space? And here's what we came up with through that one-year scoping process, and looking at what has come, the work that's come before us, standing on those scholars' shoulders. But access to cultural resources, holistic health, livelihoods, education, and self-governance. And I'm going to pass for, we're just going to hit some of the highlights here. And I want to just make sure I share that this is available on the website, damremovalsocialimpact.com. And we have a few copies of this work here if you want to get more details.
It is well worth reading. I know because I wrote it. So the first topic we looked at was access to cultural resources. And this was a topic that resonated really strongly with our participants. We have people talking about tribal people using the river and teaching the youth. This is family time, community time that happens on the river, engaging with these cultural resources. We have Ron pointing out that we had a good year this year, and yet we still didn't have enough for subsistence needs or ceremonial needs. There's a dramatic limitation on the fishery. There's only one tribal fishery for the Karuk people. And so people aren't getting enough food. It's that basic. And then we have one of our youth here pointing out that she went fishing with her dad when she was a kid, and she would catch all these fish. And so she thinks that dam removal is going to help her relationship to her dad and to the river. And it's these intimate connections, right, that are formed with the river and with family members in the context of the river that are so important for cultural continuity, for health, for physical, spiritual, and emotional health. And also, as we're going to talk about, for education and livelihoods. We also looked at barriers to cultural resource use, and different service areas have different challenges, which we noted. The Karuk community is diverse. And the key statistic here is that only 22% of local respondents had, quote, enough access to meet their needs. So 80% of local people are limited in their ability to access cultural resources that are fundamental for their physical, mental, and spiritual needs. We also found that people who live outside of the area, more than 3 hours away, are coming back to the river to fish and to gather. People are coming from multiple states away to come back to the Klamath River to use it. So this isn't even speaking to people who live farther away. These are some of the uses that people reported. I'll let you just take a minute to look at this, but we were really impressed with how active the community is. And this is both local and non-local respondents put together. So you're seeing widespread, ubiquitous participation. We talked to youth specifically. Everywhere that we did adult focus groups, we also did youth focus groups. We talked to almost as many youth as we did adults, and that was a really key part of this project. It was one of the central messages that came out, is that this project is about youth. And so when we talked to them, I've swam in creeks and rivers my whole life. The youth have their own intimate connection to the Klamath. It may not be formed by fishing and gathering yet, but they start out by spending time on the river, learning to fish, learning to gather, spending time with their families. We also noted that youth have seen environmental decline on the scale of their lifetime. These are people who have never lived with a swimmable main stem Klamath River, but they're still able to detect the decline of the river. And then we have this interest in cultural continuity that the youth show. The youth are also concerned about future generations, not just the parents. And so there's this foresight and responsibility that the youth really hold. And one example of that is the Salmon Run, which is a demonstration that was started in 2002 after the fish kill, where the youth run relay style 450 miles from the mouth of the river to Upper Klamath Lake. And like they say here, it's to show people how much it means and what they'll do for it and how many people care about the project. It's a very powerful demonstration that was started by high school students in 2002. So we were really pleased to see how involved the youth are, and we also know how much is at stake for these youth. Oh, no? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to mention this really briefly, but two areas in the domains that I wanted to make sure we touched on today in this room, because they could very easily be indicators in our own work as scientists or as folks doing restoration work in very awesome place-specific context. But education, folks talked a lot about how important education was as part of that ability for local community members to connect to the river. And here's some of those quotes. What I'm trying to say is the missing piece of that formal education is Indigenous education. This is Ron speaking. And how do we bridge that gap? So it's education, crossing worlds in some cases, that is enabled through the dam removal and restoration projects like this. And the goal is that there's a unification of the voice of the river, of the people of that river. A second quote here, our children, our students, they thrive on the river and the creeks. There's something spiritual, magical, just natural about that. And these are some of the folks that are leading education programs for tribal youth on the river. And I'll also acknowledge Save California Salmon and Regina for her work in that area. And highlighting the need of some sort of conduit of information exchange. How can that learning better occur, both in the community and the folks working on restoration projects or the dam removal? This is sort of our baseline. When we asked folks in the survey, how interested are you in learning more? 80% said they want to learn. Have you received any information on dam removal in the last year? So self-reporting, the folks who are local leading up to the removal process, about half of them had not received information about dam removal, as they said, in the last year. So that's how do we make that connection happen? What is helpful in partnerships for that? Livelihoods. This is our third domain I want to mention for today. And the linkage between livelihoods and the dam removal restoration that was originally conceived through the KBRA. Where are we going with this? That was part of the motivation for this work. And here's what communities have to say. I want to make sure that a majority of the money gets back to the pockets of tribal people at the end of this project, because they were the ones who suffered the most. That's our collie puppy, Ferris George. I'd like to have my children come back to a place they can call home. It's one of the highest priorities, making a living wage and a place to live. But I think that's just the way it's set up here. The land ownership, the federal government ownership, there's a lot of barriers for people being able to come home. Making a living wage through the restoration work is part of that solution. Access to jobs. Folks say, do you have an interest in jobs? Yes, so many people do, especially in culturally relevant jobs. Have you received information about jobs? Definitively no, at least going into the dam removal with the folks we talked to in the Karuk community. So to wrap up on the study and pass more importantly to Ron to comment, the overarching message here is, about reconsidering our conceptual frame. How might we consider a more holistic reference system here? Because we know social cultural changes are tied to these biophysical changes. We know that scientific monitoring indicators, don't have to be limited to fish counts and sediment load. We can add other things in there in our goal and make that explicit in our work and track that. And tribal well-being is a great translation tool for being able to think through how we define and track dam removal progress, and restoration initiatives can work with these conceptual frameworks and build in their own measures of success of dam removal restoration and ask themselves, how are we doing with including some of the folks who really fought hardest over the 20 years to make this happen in the first place. So I'll stop there and pass to our dear friend and colleague, Ron, who was there in 2002 with the first dam removal conversation and the comment and add. So thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah, and then sorry.
No,
If you want to, and this microphone here and a second microphone for this.
okay, great. Thank you so much, John, R, and Sibyl. I mean, I think it's amazing to be able to have a Karuk perspective amplified in a scientific value system. When you're talking about technical models and this and that, and how do you get your piece of the pie? So anyway, that's kind of like how I felt listening to this. And thank you so much for all the hard work that you guys did for this. Ayuki Hutkich, Mkaka. My name's Mkaka. My name's Ron Reed. I'm a Karuk tribal member. I'm a survivor of the dam removal process. I was a tribal lead for the Karuk tribe in 2001 through 2006. Yeah, there was a lot there. Lot to be said, but that's not why we're here. One of the pictures we seen earlier was me fishing with my son Ryan, which he was born in 2000. So he was 1 year old when I was laying it all out on the line, not holding back. And I'm just thankful that I'm still here. Thankful to be part of this movement, the movement of getting the dams down, but that's the only part of it. As all you parents know, it's kind of like with your children. You get them to school, but that's only, you're halfway done. There's a lot there, so I think right now, I think the dams come down, our kids are at school. But now, they need to fix it. It's time for the next generation to fix it. Pikia, fix it. Pikiawish, fix the world. Simthal, Pikiao, fix the world with fire. Those are the things that we're addressing here today, the things that you're addressing here today as well. It's called eco-cultural revitalization / restoration. Maybe restoration / revitalization. The restoration has to happen so we have the resources necessary to carry on our inherent responsibility. We all have an inherent responsibility here, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's why we're all here. There's a sense of Mother Earth. There's a sense of fixing it. There's a sense of who are we? I'm a ceremonial leader at Pikiawisha Inam. And the most profound understanding of life is the health and wellness of your family and your relations. They're all cooped up into one. Salmon. We hold our ceremonies around salmon because they're the most beneficiary out of all the work that we do spiritually with the use of fire. The salmon receives the most amount of benefit. Human being, right there. You can't separate them. You can't separate fire from fish. You can't separate human beings from the resources we depend on. Because those resources that we depend on over time has been manipulated by human beings over time. We are here because of mismanagement. Indigenous knowledge has found its way. Indigenous knowledge allows us to understand that a fish is not just a fish. Water is not just water. The wind is just not wind. And the people are just not people. I like to think and have the understanding that all of us have our own way of relating to the greater piece of life, afterlife. To be able to get here, I'm sure we've had to bend like a willow. I know I've bent quite a few people my own self, so yes, bent like a willow and come back up. But we do understand that we are all in this together. That's why every year when we pray during our ceremony, it's for the world. We're fix the world people. But how can we fix the world when our world's fallen apart, has been erased from us, taken from us? And now we finally have the opportunity to give back, to be able to create the understanding that we will never leave, we will never quit our fight, and we will always be here for the better of all. Just the importance of family, health, and wellness. In that regard, I just want to say that I hope you are taking care of yourself. I hope you are taking care of your family. And I would hope to think that you're taking care of the things necessary to carry on life over time. That's what we do every year at the river. The dams come out. We're going to have more fish. We have better materials, better relationships, better restoration, better revitalization. And now it's time for Indigenous knowledge to rebuild the integrity, the culture integrity of the great people that own it. We own that knowledge. It's now time for us to bring it back in a useful way, in a world renewal type of way. And just so happens that we do it right. Academia can amplify this message to the better of all. And thank you so much, my colleagues. A lot of the colleagues I can't quite focus in on right now, getting a little older. But you know, I really appreciate being here today, being here yesterday, and my children are well on their way of being here tomorrow. By the way, I feel young today because I've been mentioned as Charlie Reed, my son. So yeah, that's what it's all about. He has a baby, another grandbaby. I have plenty of grandbabies. I have plenty of inherent responsibilities to carry on this work. So I look forward to seeing you all soon, more, because we have a lot of work to do. And if we don't do it together, Then we're working in those silos again. And those are the things we worked ourselves out of to get dam removal to happen. To be able to get those boxes, rip them apart, to say, hey, what's the best for everybody involved here? Thank you, every one of you, for the work that you do. Southern Oregon University for having us. Yotra.
Thanks for being patient with the time, and actually, there's one more slide just to maybe leave it on that. And if folks are interested in copies of the part, we have a few, so feel free to come on up and oh, questions? Yeah, questions. Do we have time for a question or two?
Yeah. Do I need to wait? All right. I just feel like I want to say something. I want everybody in this room to understand how important Reed was to dam removal. When I showed up 20 years ago, he was the first Native person I knew of that had the courage to get on a national stage over and over and over again and talk about what they just talked about today. And it teared me up then, it teared me up today. And it took so much courage. And Ron, every time you get up there, I know you dump your heart out. And I know it ain't easy. And I think all of us who come from this, Western tradition of hard science and get hung up on nanograms of this and picomoles of that, sometimes it's hard for us to wrap our minds around these concepts, which can feel very abstract. And it felt abstract to me, and it blew my mind. And it took a long time for you to coach me and help me understand this stuff. And I just want to thank you. And I think I can say that, folks like Taz and Mike Belchek and all of us have hung in there. We've hung in there because you took the time and invested the time and was patient to us and helped us build enough cultural competence that we could navigate Indian country. And I just want everybody in this room to take a minute and give Ron Reed a round of applause because of the role he's played.
I just, Craig, you have just as much as, Kari Norgard validating. She was the first validator of the work that I represent today. And I couldn't talk for the life of me until Craig Tucker showed up, and he created a bunch of monsters with the microphone. So he kind of created this just as much as the Todd Sotos, the Will Harley, the Lee Hillman, and then go down my family tree, go down, the eco-cultural tree that we had a small team of, dreaming dam removal, dreaming all these things. So thank everybody for all of that, the work that continues to happen. And, I don't know, there's, the tribes bailed me out so many times, conservation bailed me out so many times, to where I'm able to tell the story now fluently. I'm able to get my own team together to get the case studies that we need. What are the political pressure points, I call them, what we have to do to kind of get to this level. And so now we've been lecturing for a while, and now we just want to put it together. I got hired as a cultural biologist to identify impacts. I want to go out as a cultural solutionist, but coming home with, let's go out and do the things that is going to heal us. because health and wellness is everything. Dams coming out, but we have a whole ideology that including that world. We're able to heal ourselves, and not just like the river. We can heal the river, and we can heal ourselves as well. So it's very intertwined. We have a new generation of kids coming up now. Very exciting. Thank you so much, Craig. Okay.
Any other questions?
You give that back to me then. No, I'm-
Great. I think that's hard to follow up, so let's just go to a break for a bit. Let's start again in about 10 minutes, 3:30. Thanks, everyone.